You would never know it now, but this was the same field that the deer approached me a couple of days ago, now 3 days ago. And now it has been torched to a crisp. If you're not familiar with prairie and native grasses in the Midwest, the plains, in nature they usually get struck by lightning once every few years, and it gets totally burnt, and then that makes the roots grow in much better the following year, or less amount of time actually, probably I would say within a month you won't really be able to tell that anything happened here. And it still is really sad to see it like this though, because it must have been just the day after I filmed them that this was burned. But already you can see a little bit of green activity poking up through the grass, and the birds are kind of mingling about the brush a little bit too. Today is Easter Sunday, and I finished all of my family stuff today, and I am getting in some exercise before doing I don't know what this evening. But today feels a little bit like a Thanksgiving to me. I'm not sure why, but I am concentrating on gratitude more and more. And the more time I spend out here, the easier it is to do that. Well, that's really charred. I hate to see that, actually. I have to say that while I do have a tendency to become bored easily, or just to have a short attention span with projects, I do have a tendency to... I do see through major projects, but I don't like any notion of doing the same thing forever. So I'm not a one career kind of person at all. I can't see myself being your typical professional librarian, teacher, or anything of that nature. I like to have a lot of blended themes in what I'm doing, have very general roles. I just get bored with the details or something. But I think that I have been happier in the United States, because that is sort of how our culture works here. We are not really a place of specialists to the extent that you will see in most of Europe. And see, if you look further afield, the pigeons and doves are taking advantage of the exposed worms or something. But I have to say that I am grateful to be in the United States, because I, for the most part, really like this broad general attitude that prevails here in many situations. And people are quite accessible here. There are not too many people that I feel are completely out of reach or unapproachable. In Canada, when I lived there, I found that while intellectually I might feel a little bit more in my element there, there just isn't that particular enduring optimism there. And while it's not always realistic to be that way, I think that is a cultural asset in some situations here. I have a friend that I worked with in Montreal from Catalonia in what is technically now northeastern Spain, but wants to be its own country, or at least run itself fiscally. And he was saying how it's really interesting that in Spain, in any region, if you start up a business, if you can even get somebody to back you in it, if it fails, that's it. You're toast. There's nothing more to be had. Whereas Americans are able to constantly rebrand ourselves generally in a way that other countries' cultures don't really support. However, as has been noted, there is a superficiality to that comes with that also. So I will say that it's getting harder for people to inflate themselves through a crisis now, because also a lot of the gimmicks and the slogans and things like that have really become tiresome here, and you're not able to just come up with a marketing scheme that will make everything nice. That has sort of had its heyday, and probably that's a good riddance. But again and again, I'm just grateful to have this very, very easy network of doing things. But it's not to the extent that your more Mediterranean countries have networks where this is the person you do business with, and then you have to go to all the weddings and stuff like that. It's a nice blend of Northern and Southern European, and then I guess Asian ambition right now. And yeah, I think of that a lot. On a personal note, I can't really see whether I am supposed to stay in it or where I fit in the whole system here. But I will say that it's sort of an exciting time to be here, because while there is a demoralized aspect to what goes on, at the same time there is a sense of sort of rebuilding things from the ground up here, and I wouldn't just want to run away from the setbacks and the difficulties encountered in the reorganization of this country. And there will be some version of a collapse in terms of a retooling of how things are done, and a lot of it's not going to be nice. Like, once eventually people decide, the powers that be decide that they're not going to keep up the same sort of financial system and so forth. What I'm really interested in knowing from people now is how you're feeling about where to put your money. 2-3 years ago, it was, how do I preserve what I have and then to make some money or create a job for myself. Right now, more people have work who are wanting to work, but the question is, how do we make sure that what we have doesn't vanish completely. While there isn't a particular threat to this in the United States directly, or like in a very imminent way, personally I've been touched by this a little bit. In 2010, when I stayed in the US just for a couple of months before going to grad school, the interest rates had collapsed by that point in like a desperate attempt to get people to spend money. But the banks had set up something where if you had all of your income put into your account as a direct deposit, and you did several of your accounts, I think you had to have 10 things automatically withdrawing. So in terms of your electric bill or your car payment and so forth, if you had those two things in motion, you could get 2.5% interest on your bank account, I think, for all balances between $10,000 and $100,000. Well, that's been removed, and now the interest rates are, I don't even know like how low, like around 0.1% or something for your basic savings account. Whereas I can remember as recently as 2003, I was making over 2% there. But I had the situation where my average balance for 2 months in my savings account went under $1,000 for one of my accounts, and I was charged a $3 service fee for each of those months. And with what's happening in Cyprus now, I personally feel that this is a test market, because it's so small, to see what people do, and they'll start with an outrageous figure and then settle with something. I would say maybe 10 or 20% of the savings accounts is what they're going to confiscate. And then the strategy will be that, people will be grateful or relieved or something to that effect. And then if that is successful, they'll try doing that in Northern European countries in a couple of years' time, just to sort of see what they can do. And by that point, there may not be any secure spot for money anyway. So the question is, you can't really pull your money out, because then you have that liability of carrying this cash around. You don't really want to put the money in, because it loses value with everything else, inflation-wise, weighing down on it. You don't want to put it in gold or silver, because while logically they should go up in value or really hold their own value in this transition, they are highly manipulated and suppressed, you could say. And so that's dangerous. Anything digital, which is what most of the money is questionable. The only thing that seems feasible to me is to buy into land if you can make money from the land. But you don't want to over leverage yourself in that way either, because you need to make sure that you have a regular infusion of cash in order to pay for supplies and taxes that would be required for that land. And so I'm just curious what kind of strategies are being implemented right now among many of you watching, if anything, or if you just sort of count on everything collapsing to the point that it won't matter. However, I often quote Catherine Austin Fitts, who seems to me to be the most legitimate person, most qualified person in the whole truther financial scene. And she's saying that if we actually don't want money to disappear, because that is actually a fantasy of some of our administrators, then you really don't have anything to bargain with in some sort of totalitarian situation. And to many this seems like crazy talk, but I think it's just being pragmatic and looking for ways to adapt, because it's not historically unprecedented for these sort of events to happen. I am not, as you probably gathered from a moment ago, someone who insists on buying gold and silver or an austerity person. But I do think that we have to make sure that a little bit of preparation takes place so that we're not totally dispossessed. And to some of you who know me personally or correspond with me a little bit, you'll know why my mind is on these things a little bit more as of late. And as always, I do appreciate you watching. Make sure you get plenty of time outdoors and do invest in higher quality food, organic or locally produced, because it will give you a tremendous energy boost. So thank you for watching and happy Easter. Bye.